What's up, everybody? Let's talk some weekend hoops. It was a great weekend, especially Saturday night. I just got done watching the ending of the Grizzlies-Celtics game. Only watched the last 2 minutes. Some very poor shot selection, I should say, from the Grizzlies after they took that lead on that Desmond Bane 3. Some miscommunication on defense. And, of course, allowing that offensive rebound. That Drew dunk was insane. I can't believe he tried to cram that, but the Grizzlies look like the season from hell is continuing for them, but I'm not here to talk about that. First, I have to start with my Philadelphia 76ers, who have bounced back since dropping 2 to the Pacers and the Celtics last week. Today's game against the Nets was the full Joel Embiid, Embiid Maxey Duo experience that really, it just showed the full ceiling of what they could be. They really controlled that game from start to finish. Really just the offense between those two, the two-man game between those two, just really opened things up. Embiid Maxey, he just continues to surprise me in a lot of ways, growing in a lot of ways that I'm at the point now where I think I've said this before, but I'm just not going to put a cap on this kid's ceiling anymore. His playmaking today was the best I have seen from him in his career to date. He was hitting Joel Embiid with pocket passes, and Embiid missed a few mid-range jumpers when they were running middle pick and roll over and over again, and it's shots that Embiid usually makes, but Maxey was hitting Embiid in the pocket passes. He was making some cross-court passes to the corner, one for a Marcus Morris 3, another one out of an Embiid Maxey two-man action where Melton relocated to the weak side wing and Maxey threw it to Melton for a 3. The reads he was making were immaculate, and the passing of Joel Embiid once again popped out. He continues to show his improved playmaking. 9 assists, 1 turnover. Maxey had 10 assists and 1 turnover, and they really just controlled the game from start to finish. Nick Batum was back, made some really nice connector-type passes. Already the best post-entry passer the Sixers have had in years, but a really good dominating win from the Sixers, and this team just continues to show that they're cohesive and they're really good. And then we bounce to the Cavs Nuggets, where I watched the full second half of that game. Jared Allen had Nikola Jokic in absolute hell that entire third quarter. Jokic drew 2 offensive fouls on Jared Allen, and that might be the one weakness Jokic still has, is that temper of his. And just, he got caught on a few offensive fouls where he did the little chicken wing. 2 possessions later, elbow to Jared Allen's face, which ended up being a flagrant, and the Nuggets got blown out the gym by the Cavs. Really good win from start to finish, and there's one player I want to highlight, and no, it's not Craig Porter Jr., who should be in the rotation from now on. A really nice undrafted find for the Cavs. Caught my attention during that Knicks national game on Halloween night where they hosted the Knicks, and Craig Porter Jr. just showed out. And even though it was a blowout, that was one of the bright spots from the Cavs. And Craig Porter Jr. was fantastic in this one. But I wanted to talk about Max Strus because he has absolutely changed the Cavs offense. And it's really weird right now to judge the Cavs because their big four has really been in and out of the lineup. They've only had a few games together where they were fully healthy. But Max Strus, his shooting, his movement shooting, and the fact that he's just really solid on the defensive end has really changed a lot for the Cavs. And they're leaning into Evan Mobley a bit more as the hub, doing DHOs and stuff like that. And Max Strus has immediately found chemistry with Evan Mobley. I'm sure if you go and look at Evan Mobley's lobs that he's had, his alley-oop dunks that he's finished, Max Strus is probably the assist man on half of them. Max Strus also had a nice one off of a Mobley fake off DHO, and then Strus got in the paint and lobbed one up to Jared Allen. Max Strus is just the connecting offensive player the Cavs have needed. They went out and got shooting in the offseason. That was their goal. Their offense became too predictable. There were too many non-shooting liabilities on the court in that Knicks series, and The Cavs have got Niang, Strus, Dean Wade. He had a funky injury with his shoulder last year, and he looks to be better from that. Started today, had 10 big rebounds, was 2 of 4 from 3. Looks like he's got his shooting form back. But Max Strus is the guy that has kind of changed the complexion of the Cavs offense. It's more diversified now. He's only shooting 36% from 3, but it's the movement shooting, it's the gravity, it's the near 15 points a game, averaging 6 rebounds, averaging 4 assists a game. And like I said, that chemistry with Mobley and the DHO is just sublime right now. And the Cavs are definitely getting their money's worth, and we'll see if that pays off in the playoffs down the line. But now they get the regular season, obviously, to iron that stuff out. And right now, Max Strus completely changed the complexion of the Cavs offense. Darius Garland, just one side note on Darius Garland, I would like to see him take more threes. That hamstring injury definitely slowed him down a bit to start the year, because I was hoping going into the season he would take more threes, but I'm sure he'll rev up as the season goes along. He was awesome tonight. He was killing Jokic in that drop coverage, especially with Jokic in foul trouble. They really just picked at that scab the entire time. So Max Strus, great pickup for the Cavs. And then let's talk about Karl Anthony Towns, because that's sort of the big spotlight guy everybody's looking at with this Timberwolves team. Low-key, well, not low-key, very high-key, especially if you're a Timberwolves fan and you want to shout it from the mountaintops. The Minnesota Timberwolves are the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, with the Nuggets losing tonight. And Karl Anthony Towns seems to be finding his stride a bit offensively within, the Anthony Edwards, Mike Conley, Jaden McDaniel, that whole offense. It seems like Cat is figuring it out with not a wonky fit, but they're figuring out the 2 big lineup and how that works offensively. Defensively, I've already highlighted their defense, but Karl Anthony Towns has figured it out. Since the Boston game, which was also a big win, let's start off with the fact that the Wolves are 8-1 in their last 9 games, but since the Boston game, Karl Anthony Towns is averaging nearly 27 points per game, nearly 9 rebounds a game, and 3 assists per game on 59% from the field and 48% from 3 on nearly 5.5 attempts per game. Had the game-winning floater yesterday against the New Orleans Pelicans. Had a big 3 before that to put the Wolves up 2. And Karl Anthony Towns, he's finding his stride. And the reason he's the big spotlight player is because we all know the Wolves, they have a lot of big money contracts tied up to Rudy Gobert, Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels. Karl Anthony Towns is making crazy amounts of money over the next few years, and there's just people expect the Wolves to at least make a big trade, because it just doesn't seem financially possible to keep this team together, especially with the second apron rules that everybody claims they know so much about, even though it's still complicated as fuck. But Karl Anthony Towns, he's been playing well. He's been playing well defensively. He's been a contributor to the Wolves having one of the best defenses in the NBA. And right now, the Wolves are sitting pretty at 9-3. Of course, it's early, but right now, we can only talk about what's happened to date. And to date, Karl Anthony Towns has been playing some great basketball in this context. And real quickly before I go, I wanted to talk about the Milwaukee Bucks, because right now they are 9-4. They've won 4 in a row. They're 7-3 in their last 10 games. And I wanted to talk about the Bucks because they kind of had an uneven start to the season. And Adrian Griffin, first-year head coach, was just getting all this flack. And not to name drop it, I was actually talking to Ty Windish of the Eurostep podcast last week, and I was in Cleveland for a wedding and, met Ty, and we were talking about the Bucks and just how crazy it is that it's early in the season, but people just wanted this man fired. And look, has he been good to start the season? Definitely uneven, but again, he's a first-year head coach. Would I like the Bucks to run more Giannis and Dame pick and roll? Yes. Giannis still might be taking one too many jumpers for my liking now that they have Damian Lillard that you can just throw the ball to on the perimeter, but they're still figuring stuff out, and in them figuring stuff out, you look up and they have the 8th best offense per cleaning the glass. And in the last 2 weeks, that offensive rating is 120. So they're figuring some stuff out. Their defense was really bad to start the year. They were playing Brook way high up at the level. And ever since that Knicks game, Brook has been back in a deep drop, his best coverage. And they're still going to figure some stuff out defensively. Dame and Malik Beasley in the backcourt, that's just a minus defensively. Let's just call it what it is. But again, when the Bucks get rolling on offense like they did last night against the Dallas Mavericks, and I watched that entire game, Luka and Kyrie did their thing, Dame and Giannis did their thing, Dame closed them out in the fourth quarter. But when they get rolling, that offense is unstoppable because you have 2 of the 10 to 15 best players on one team, and they're still going to figure some stuff out. I'm curious to see how they continue to make tweaks defensively, but again, Damian Lillard still had 27 points and 12 assists. Giannis still had 40, 15, and 7. Like, these 2 guys are really good. They're going to rack up a lot of wins. It's not doom and gloom. From the outside looking in, I just don't see doom and gloom, and when I was talking to Ty about the Bucks, he pretty much agreed with me. This is going to be a process for this team. Now, we can talk about, are they at the level of Boston? I don't think so, but that doesn't mean they can't get there by the end of the season. I mean, they are my finals pick coming out of the East. I did have the Nuggets and the Bucks in the finals before the season started. They're making adjustments. They got Brook back in the deep drop. Pat Connaughton was great in that fourth quarter yesterday. Bobby Portis had 11 and 7 off the bench. I mean, I still like the Bucks rotation. They definitely need an injection of some athleticism. Jay Crowder being out for 6 to 8 weeks, that's a pretty big loss. Marshawn Beauchamp is currently injured, and he was going to be the guy everybody pegged as someone who can inject some athleticism into that team. Chris Middleton, low-key, nobody's talking about it, but he's still on a minutes restriction, did not play yesterday, and the Bucks are still somehow 8th in offensive rating. They're going to be just fine. We don't need 20 tweet threads from Bucks accounts talking about why Adrian Griffin, 4 games into the season, was the wrong man for the job. I just don't see it like that. Oh, for real, before I go, also was watching the last 5 minutes and the overtime of Warriors Thunder. The Warriors broadcast crew of Bob Fitzgerald and Kalina Azubuike, what are they? Bottom 3 broadcast crew in the NBA. I'm sure a lot of people that listen to this channel have League Pass, but they have to be the worst. I have watched NBC Bay Area for a long time. I was going to college in Northern California way before the rise of the Warriors and the Steph Curry era. And Bob Fitzgerald and Jim Barnett, that was a fine duo. He was actually a really good play-by-play broadcaster, but ever since the Warriors won that first title, I just feel like the level of pretentiousness and entitlement just went up a notch with Bob Fitzgerald. Also, he's seems to be really close with Warriors owner Joe Lacob, so he's just carte blanche, has the license to do and say whatever he wants, and just some prime hating and complaining whenever stuff doesn't go their way. And Kalina, I know he's a little new to color commentary, but he seems to be sucked in by the vortex of Bob Fitzgerald. And like yesterday on the Chet game-tying 3, even though the broadcast camera angle doesn't show that 3-point line where Chet took that 3 from, you could immediately tell it was a game-tying 3, and yet they insisted that Chet's foot was on the line, and he was nowhere near the line. If anything, he was more closer to the out-of-bounds line than the 3-point line. I don't know. I had to switch to the Thunder broadcast because I just cannot listen to them anymore. I know Warriors fans, some sensible Warriors fans at least, have said the same thing. Hell, Danny LaRue, I remember, he wrote a open letter on The Athletic asking the Warriors to remove Bob Fitzgerald as the play-by-play broadcaster. Now, I'm not one to call for people's jobs, but I'm just illustrating how bad it got, and that was a few years ago. They have just become unlistenable, and it's a shame because I really love watching the Warriors play basketball. Y'all know my affinity for the Warriors and Steph Curry being my second favorite player ever, so I have watched a lot more Warriors games than a lot of non-Warriors fans have probably watched Warrior games, and just the evolution of Bob Fitzgerald has just been dreadful.